Thought I was supposed to be done with YouTube. Welcome back to the Al factory. It's been about a month, so it's been pretty quiet, bit of peace and quiet. It's been good. I've been pretty flat out working on various cars, so this is the first one I've actually completed, so we're going to have a bit of a look over that. And it's quite a cool car. It's got a good story, so that's what it's all about. So let's have a look. This 1977 RA23 Celica is owned by our friend Leigh. He inherited it off his late father. His father built the car. I think Leigh said he started in the mid-90s, maybe 94, something like that. They previously had another yellow Celica, which was pretty original and all ratty and needed a restore. And he grabbed another Celica and they kind of combined the two. It's obviously had a full respray. That was, I think it was completed in about 1997, so it has aged very well. If you've ever painted a car, you've probably undergone the disappointment of finding out that it doesn't last as long as you wished it would if you don't do it properly. So obviously they did a pretty decent job of it at the time. The interesting thing about this was Leigh's dad was, he'd worked in wrecking yards for a long time, and so he knew his way around cars and car models and what fitted what and that sort of thing. He was kind of an old school wrecking yard guy where you could actually go in and ask him a question and they'd go, yeah, I know this thing off this model here fits that model, and you can hybrid them all up. That used to be the great thing about wrecking yards back in the day. So he actually did that with this car. So it's got a lot of sort of bits and pieces off other Toyota models. There was a lot of attention to detail. He did a really great job of it. I don't know how many years later, quick math, 20 years later, and it still held up pretty well. The really kind of odd thing about this was he actually fitted a Rover V8 to it, which is definitely unusual for a Celica. Well, it is in my world anyway. And I guess there was probably a few reasons why that happened. Back in the day in Queensland, very strict on capacity versus like vehicle weight, and you could only do this size engine for this weight car. So these cars are quite light. So that engine, I'm assuming it would be either a 3.5 or 3.9 Rover V8 that was in it. But it was also a bit of a hybrid, as I think was probably the fashion of the time, especially with Leigh's dad working around cars and knowing what things fit other things. But that size engine, that was probably the biggest V8 you could expect to fit into this car and get it like legally registered at the time. So that Rover V8 was mated to a Celica 5-speed, like a W57 or 55, something like that. And it all fitted in there really nicely. Like it was kind of, apart from the headers, which were very difficult to obviously fit and manufacture, it looked almost factory, which I guess is what Leigh's dad and the guy that helped him build it, George, were going for. So they did a great job, and I was quite impressed when I pulled it apart, how the level of detail of how factory clips and brackets and things holding things on were retained and used. So unfortunately, with age, the poor old Rover V8 wasn't doing too well. The car hasn't been driven much for the last probably 10 years, which is probably why it's in pretty good nick still, because it hasn't seen the light of day much. And it was due to just niggling problems with what is a pretty old engine. The old Rover V8 came out in the 60s. It was actually a Buick engine design that Rover bought the rights to build, or British Leyland, or whatever they were called at the time. So it's an old pushrod V8, but not very big, so you can't expect too much, a lot of power out of them, which it probably would have been plenty for this car and made a nice drive back when it was fresh. But Leigh had a lot of problems with it. It had obviously oil leaks because it's an English product, and it also leaking water pumps and stuff like that you can no longer buy. I worked on it probably 10 years ago and fitted an electric water pump to it to try and keep it on the road. And that worked for a little while, but it was just constantly having problems and he wasn't getting to enjoy it. The other thing about it is Leigh is a Japanese car fan, so he likes Japanese engines, so we kind of hatched the plan to remove that Rover engine years ago and fit a Japanese engine, and we went through a few different ideas about what you can fit to them. The engine bay is quite big in these, so you can fit a lot of different engines, JZs, G-series 6 cylinders, 1UZs, you can fit pretty much anything into them. So what we ended up settling on after a lot of different options was a Beams 3S GE engine, which comes out of an Altezza. We call them IS200s in Australia, and they have a different engine that's rubbish. But in Japan, they had the same vehicle with a 2-litre 4-cylinder. And Beams is an acronym that Japanese love to use, and it means a breakthrough engine and mechanical system. Basically, we made a flash engine and put all the technology that we had available to us at the time on that engine to try and make what is, you generally can't expect too much out of a 2-litre NA engine, but they threw everything at it to try and get the best performance out of it. 210 horsepower is the factory rating for a manual Beams 3S GE, and I mean that's nothing by today's standards, but for an NA vehicle in 1999, that was pretty flash. So let's have a look under the bonnet, because I'm waffling on about something that you don't even know what it looks like.
Rocky Nuts is approaching. This is Queensland's biggest and best car event, in my opinion. Don't miss out this Easter long weekend. It's an awesome event. There's a whole bunch of stuff going on, off-street drags, burnouts, show cars. There's a whole new four-wheel drive thing going on up there too, which is pretty sick. And I'm going to be cruising around in the Crown Wagon. I've got 7 seats. I've got a boosted Barra. So if you see me cruising, give me a wave. I'll give you a lift. Come on up, bring your cars, get an entrant fee. It's one not to miss. We'll see you there on the Easter long weekend. Enjoy.
Funny flippy forward bonnets. It was the fashion of the time in the 70s for the Japs. So there it is in all its glory. 2-litre NA. The 3S engine came out in the 80s, so it's a pretty ripe old thing. Went through a lot of generations. Turbo engines, they were a bit of a god engine in the Celica GT4s and stuff like that as a rally car engine. Had success in World Rally Championship, and they also put that World Rally sort of spec engine into the JGTC touring car Supras in the 90s instead of using the 2JZ, which seems like an odd idea to me, but I think it made it fit into a class well, and they were quite successful in that as well. So a pretty decent engine being developed over the years, and this is pretty much the final development of it. It was discontinued after this engine in about 2005. So notable, obviously it's written on the valve, the plastic cover there, dual variable cam timing. Everything's got that these days. So it's nothing special now, but in 1999 it was early adoption of dual variable cam timing technology, which has a lot of benefits as far as tuning goes. It's still a timing belt engine, pretty simple. There's not much else about it that is actually very breakthrough, but the inlet manifold is probably the most interesting part of the engine. I'm going to leave it to a lot of people in the comments to speculate about the design of it, but it's actually kind of like a dual plenum design. There's a plenum underneath, and I think there might be like a slot type setup in it. Then there's an upper plenum. There's bell mounts inside there. Then it's got a rubber, sort of like what you used to have on Webers to let the Webers flop around so they didn't vibrate themselves to death, like a rubber sort of isolator, and then another manifold down lower with injectors right on the cylinder head. So there's obviously, they've spent a lot of time tuning that to achieve, I guess, a broad torque range and also top end power. As I said, it's got 210 horsepower as spec'd. They rev to, I think the red line's a little bit over 8,000 RPM, so it's pretty raucous, especially in this car because it's from the 70s, and yeah, it goes pretty good. It needs a turbo as far as I'm concerned. I've done this conversion before on a little race car thing that we built back in the day at AM Auto, and the first thing I thought when I drove it was, why didn't we put a turbo on this? Because it would have just been kind of the ultimate to have an engine that breathes this well in NA form, and then give it some extra atmosphere, and that is the plan for this in the future. I worked pretty heavily with Leigh to keep it in budget. Luckily, it actually fitted in there really well. Fitment wise, perfect. I think it's a very practical engine to put into a Celica. We didn't change the steering rack or anything, didn't lower the cross member, didn't do anything special. All I did was hack off the original mounts. I've used the original brackets that fit onto the Beams engine, which are aluminium, some Patrol engine mounts, which I'm a fan of, and just some little pads for those engine mounts to sit on that I cut out of just box section steel. So very simple stuff. The transmission's actually sitting on the factory RA23 gearbox mount with a little spacer on it. So super easy to fit. In hindsight, if you don't know what you're doing at the start, which I didn't, you obviously got to work your way through it, but it is a good fit, and it fits well in the engine bay. Everywhere pretty much works. I've used the actual Altezza radiator, which you can buy in Australia, even though they didn't sell the car here, but I couldn't get the original fans, which I wanted to use, but of course I've reverted back to my traditional Subaru WRX fans, which I still had a couple left on the shelf. They work great. So that system works awesome. It barely gets it just sort of sits at temperature, and the fans don't even really do much most of the time in this weather, so which is quite hot here at the moment still. Engine management system is standard out of the Altezza due to budget constraints, really. That is probably the problem with this conversion, is that engine management system is not very good. I'd say it was probably problematic from day one. There's doing some research from the issues I had with it, getting it to run properly. I found that it's common for Altezzas to have problems in factory form, and it's also common for people that swapping them into other cars to have a lot of problems with getting them running properly as well. It's just a very finicky system. That the airflow meter is hyper finicky. You've got to do exactly the right thing if you want it to even run properly in the slightest, and it still sort of gives you little flat spots and stuff and bogs and stuff when you're driving it. And I was very disappointed that that's the way it sort of turned out with the factory engine management, because I normally have pretty good luck with factory engine management stuff over the years, and you use it for budget reasons, and when it doesn't work as well as it should, being factory, it is a bit disappointing. But we will look at upgrading that later, maybe in a couple of years' time or whatever. When budget allows, we'll probably turbo it and change the engine management system to like aftermarket, and then it will be able to be tuned correctly, because Toyota ECUs are locked down tight. You cannot do anything with them. So I've worked around it, tried a couple of different airflow meter housings here, and it runs pretty good now. It's as good as I think I'm going to be able to get it, but it took a bit of time. So it reminded me why like aftermarket engine management systems are so good, because you can just whack that screen open and see every single bit of data that you need. You can find a problem, you can pin it down, and you can change it and fix it. You just can't do that with factory ECUs. They're just locked. We are running the J160 6-speed transmission that comes behind the manual beams. That fits in the tunnel, no problem at all. Replaced the dual mass flywheel that they have on them with a single mass solid flywheel and a new clutch. We kind of rated the clutch up for when it will probably have a turbo on it sometime in the future, and it's pretty well behaved actually. It drives pretty nice. The gear stick almost comes through the hole in the right place, but not quite. So we just opened up the it has like accommodation for the tunnel hole to be in multiple different spots for different engines and transmissions. That some of these cars had T series engines in them, not R series, so those gearboxes are different. So basically, I just opened up that hole as big as it can be, and Matt Tomasini is making a little cover plate to go over the top of it all and fit the factory boot, that the noise reduction and water ingress boot in the correct spot over the top of the new shifter. So that worked out really well. With tail shaft, we just had lengthened, I think. Well, basically made a new one, but it's longer. The diff in the back of this thing is not the factory diff that was fitted with. They're a tiny little T-series thing. It's actually got an EA Falcon diff in it. So that was done by Leigh's dad and George May from Racecraft, who's a sort of a local legend for doing conversions and stuff like that, in his 70s now. So it's got disc brakes, LSD. It's not really the right ratio for this engine. It was probably more suitable for a low revving V8, but you can get like 411 or different ratios for them, which again, that's going to have to be done later when the budget allows. On the front, it's had a brake conversion as well. On the front, it's got discs on the back from the EA, and on the front, it's got, I think they're Commodore calipers, and it's all custom stuff that George has made, fair size things, so that's why it's got 15-inch wheels on them. I think these wheels are actually off a Sora, like a MZ10, I think. They look like very similar to the MA60 Supra wheels, but I think they're a lot skinnier. The MA60 are quite wide. They suit it though. It's kind of a period correct sort of upgrade. If you're in the 90s and with your Celica, you'd have a look and go, should I buy these wheels or Sigma Pepper Pots? I would choose the Pepper Pots because that's how I roll. Best wheel ever made. But these look quite good too, and they clear the brakes, which is kind of the most important thing. We might fire it up. Ear warning, headphone warning. This thing makes very odd 4-cylinder NA noises, lots of buzzing and whatnot. If you've ever heard a Honda flying up the street, it kind of is a bit like that. So pull one earphone off so you don't hurt yourself. Hold ya. Give it the old Italian tune-up. That's what you do with a NA 4-cylinder, straight from cold. I've driven it up the road and given it a bit of a well, I was basically trying to check whether the engine management was operating correctly, which it kind of was, but it's not how I would hoped it would be. But at this stage, we're just going to have to Leigh's just going to have to get it back on the road and drive it around, and we'll see how it goes. It goes pretty well, obviously. This car's not very heavy. It's under a ton, 200 horsepower or whatever it's making. So, and it revs, basically it goes off the tacho, because the tacho finishes at 8 and this doesn't hit the rev limiter before the tacho disappears. So it's kind of cool. I'm sure Leigh will love it. And it's awesome to see this legacy car that's been passed down to him by his father sort of live a new life. So hope to see him out on the road having fun, driving the family around in it. And if you see a bright yellow Celica at a servo, make sure you stop and say hello, because it's probably Leigh. And he reckons that every time he stops at a servo, someone comes and talks to him about the car, which is kind of cool, and that's what cars are about. It sort of brings people together, I suppose. So thanks for listening to my TED Talk, and we'll see you next time I build a car that's worth talking about. Thanks for watching.
You know, we should go for a drive. You know, people are going to want to drive it. Maybe I'll save that for another episode. I'll go for that later.
Save it for when it's got a turbo on it.
Cool. Is it drive nice or not? You said that the engine management's like playing up. So what's the go? Is it ECU or?
I don't know.
Soft ECUs though.
Yeah, I've tried multiple things, but it's not terrible, but it's not how it should be. Let's just say that it's not up to standard.